Hi, hello, and welcome back to another Skyblock video. My name is ohSauce, and today we are going to be talking about mage builds in Hypixel Skyblock dungeons. Whether you are just getting out or are an F6 mastermind, this video will have something for you. Yes, I already know I have made one of these, but a lot of people liked it, and there were so many things in that video that are kinda wrong and or outdated. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Instead of categorizing these mage builds by stage of game, I'm going to classify them by floor number. Also, I'm going to be assuming you have all your fairy souls because dungeons is near impossible without them. If you don't have your fairy souls, go watch a video, then come back. First off, some things that apply to every floor. For some floors, the gear that you have will stay the same because the next gear up is only available on later floors. And because I'm not going to mention every single time there's a floor, an aspect of the end, grappling hook, and the highest tier of zombie sword you can get is highly recommended. You also might have a power orb as well, but it's definitely less worth it in most scenarios because it takes half your mana, and that can be like 5,000 mana. Also, unless you have enough money for a sheep pet, either epic or legendary, legendary being better, is a must. As for your talismans, you must first decide if you want to be a left or right click mage. A left click mage uses traditional berserker weapons, such as this livid dagger, except it's changed into range damage, because if we were to look at the mage passive, you can see that mage staff is a thing. All of your melee weapon attacks become ranged, and they deal percent amount depending on what mage level you are of their melee damage, and it's also increased by your intelligence. So basically it scales with your intelligence plus the melee damage. So if you're left click mage, you would want to have high crit damage, high strength, and high intelligence, which can be done with something like Necrotic Shadow Assassin Armor. If you want to be a right click mage, that's more of the standard thing where like you're just using your abilities all the time, right clicking. That's like Spirit Scepter, all the normal Bonzo Staff, Frozen Scythe, and that's the normal-ish one. I'm gonna be mainly focusing on right click mage in this video because if you want to be a left click mage, it's fairly simple. All you have to do is find a weapon that does lots of damage, and then find a set that gives lots of base strength and crit damage, then put it on Necrotic. So basically Necrotic Shadow Assassin plus like giant sword or something. If you want a guide on how to increase your standard damage or something along those lines, you could check out my guide on how to increase damage or my berserker class guide because I have one of those too. Anyway, the gear mentioned in this video is pretty much near minimum or average for people doing that floor, so anything better will of course still work. Please don't get angry at me for saying that you should use adaptive on any floor when no, you have to use Shadow Assassin instead. Look, minimum. Okay, first off, we have the entrance floor, and it's designed as a sort of tutorial. It's pretty easy. Any number of things is good as long as you have either the Wise or Necrotic Reforge on your armor. Hey, you. Yes, you over there. If this video helped you in any way and you want to make me happy, I highly recommend subscribing and or liking the video. If you have any questions about the video or any comments, comment them down in the comment section. And if you want to talk to me, you can find me on my Discord, link is in the description. That's all, back to the video. One thing I have noticed is that a lot of the intelligence doesn't come from the actual armor, it comes from the weapon and the reforge. So as you can see, Necrotic adds plus 200 intelligence to this mythic thing, which ends up being plus 500 for me in dungeons right now because of my catacombs level. So just the reforges would give you 2000 intelligence, which is pretty good. As well as having 400 defense, 82 and 69% crit damage, and a lot of health as well. So that's just an example of left click mage and why it actually works. So that applies to pretty much everything. I mean, you could take any armor, put Necrotic on it, and boom, it's a mage armor now, pretty much. So entrance floor, any mishmash of stuff. The aspect of the dragon's ability, Yeti sword ability, Frozen Sight ability, they all work pretty well for for the entrance floor. Next up, we have floor 1. On floor 1, many things become available, but most notably the Dark Goggles, Bonzo Mask, Bonzo Staff, and Dreadlord's Sword. The Dark Goggles might be available from entrance floor, but I'm not exactly sure on that one. Plus, it doesn't really matter because entrance floor is entrance floor. On floor 1, you might need a bit more defense, so I would stick to Wise Armor to be completely safe. However, it is still completable in something like Ender Armor, just less defense. Swap out the helmet or of either set for the Bonzo Mask, which gives you an extra life and more defense and health, so a bit tankier, or the Dark Goggles, which gives a crazy buff to damage 50% against undead mob, but has no base defense or health. So whichever one you think is better. You kind of have to balance the defense and attack in dungeons. For weapons, you can choose either the budget Dreadlord's Sword or the Bonzo Staff, which both have comparable damage. The Dreadlord's Sword is much cheaper, but it also deletes most floor drops like armor and frags, so be aware that is happening. Be sure to put Heroic on your weapon. On floor 2, you should definitely be using Wise Armor or something else if you've gotten carried, such as Adaptive. Your weapons also stay the same, but at some point you're gonna have to transition away from the early-ish Bonzo Staff and Dreadlord's Sword. So if you're starting to do that now with Frozen Sight and Voodoo Doll and other things like that, then it's good. The only big difference here is the Red Scarf Reforged Stone, and this is a floor 2 boss drop that gives Loving to a chest plate. And what Loving does is it increases ability damage by 10%, which is a lot. If you're doing 800k damage, that's an additional 80k damage. Also, you might be Catacombs 9, so things like Necrotic Zombie Soldier Armor become available. So you might want to consider talking about that, but I will talk about that more in floor 3. Speaking of floor 3, on floor 3, many things happen. Adaptive armor becomes a thing unless you paid for a carry before, which is much better than Wise Dragon armor, so transition to that. If you're still dying a lot, consider switching to Necrotic Zombie Soldier, which also costs less, I believe, because that gives more defense, but it gives a little bit less mana. So then again, same thing there. Trade-off, damage or defense. And then also, as mini bosses and other mobs definitely become stronger, single target damage becomes very relevant. Items like the Voodoo Doll and Ink Wand will help with that. So start transitioning there. On floor 4, there is a definite change in armor and weapon. For your armor, switch out either the Bonzo Mask or Dark Goggles that you had before for Shadow Goggles, or if you're really dying a lot and you really need the defense, keep the Bonzo Mask. The Shadow Goggles are an upgraded version of the Dark Goggles, and as you can see here, you can buy it from Ophelia. It's 60% instead of 50%, and it gives a little bit more intelligence. Also, switch out your adaptive boots for Spirit Boots, which will give a speed boost, among other things. And then finally, the Spirit Scepter is a very good mage weapon that costs 30 million coins. At this point, you should either have a Frozen Scythe or Spirit Scepter, as the Bonzo Staff begins to fall behind in damage output. Of course, you can still get by, but you're gonna be kinda being carried by your teammates. You won't be able to effectively deal with mini bosses and such, unless your armor is really good and, well, you just have a man Bonzo Staff. Next up, we have floor 5. Floor 5 is where, at least for me, things started to get a lot more difficult. However, there isn't really any mage gear. As you get to level Kata 19, you can begin to use the perfect armor. If we were to go over here, we can see that it needs Diamond Essence, and the tier 1 requires, I think, just as much as everything else, except for the Catacombs requirement. So you'd be going for tier 8 or tier 9. I think tier 8 is Kata 19 and tier 9 is Kata 21. And those will give you a lot of defense, helping you to survive on these later floors. I'll talk more about the armor swapping for defense and damage with the two main armor sets for mages a little bit later on. For Right Click Mages a little bit later on. Floor 6. Oh my gosh, speaking of Floor 6, Floor 6. Floor 6 is currently the last floor, however, Floor 7 is supposed to release sometime soon. I'm assuming that's going to come out before the end of the year, because they said it would come out kind of similarly soon to Floor 6. But Floor 6 is hard. Floor 6 is considerably harder than Floor 5. You can lose no health in Floor 5 and get like absolutely destroyed in Floor 6. Most of the necromancy stuff on Floor 6 really isn't that good, except for the Necromancer Armor, which is good for an entirely different reason than necromancy, and that is the defense of it. So if we were to look at the Necromancer Lord Armor, as you can see, the base, it gives so much defense. We will compare this to the Shadow Assassin Armor. These boots here, 150 defense compared to these boots, which give 55. That's 100 more. Look at the defense of the base set here versus the defense of this base set. It does not give any damage output though, which is where the Shadow Assassin really excels. But generally, the current meta for the Right Click Mage and maybe the Left Click Mage, I'm pretty sure Left Click Mage is different. But for Right Click Mage, you're going to want 2 forts, your bottom 2 halves, Necromancer Armor, and then your chest plate is some tier of perfect, probably 8 or 9. And then for your helmet, you have the Shadow Goggles. If you really need more defense, you can swap out more pieces than just the chest plate for defense, but the reason why they choose the chest plate is because it gives the most defense out of the rest of the set, as you can see for most things here. Like this strong dragon armor and my Shadow Assassin armor, even the snow armor. The chest plate tends to give the most stats. And then if you are crazy and you have Catacombs 28, you can start to dungeonize dragon armor sets, which are all gonna be very good while in dungeons, but I would assume that you're gonna be dungeonizing wise dragon armor, seen as it is like kind of the mage thing to do. But maybe, I don't know, Left Click Mages might use superior armor, who knows. But then again, if you are Catacombs 28, why are you watching this video? I would assume that you know more about this game than me if you're that high of a level. Yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for today's video, and if this video helped you in any way, please consider subscribing and or hitting that like button. Also, if you want to talk to me, you can find me in my Discord, link is in the description. And with that out of the way, I have nothing more to say. See ya!